let people grieve their loved one as long as they need to. Don't judge them for wanting to celebrate their loved one, and give people grace on the fact that people handle things in life differently. We're not one size fits all kind of people. We all grieve differently. We all express emotion differently. Have some empathy and help people who are grieving.
Welcome to The Narratives of Suicide, the podcast where we bring hope, community, and a voice to those who've lost to suicide. It's where we dispel the myths of suicide. We dispel historical discourses and constructs that have been steeped in history for a very long time, and we're here with hope, love, and support for everyone out there who needs to listen to this podcast. I'm so sorry you're here, but I do hope it can give you something to use in your healing process, to be able to pick up the pieces of suicide and put them back together again in the best possible way that you can.
So welcome everybody today. Big warm welcome to Tracy today from Washington State in the USA. Tracy lost Chelsie, her daughter. Chelsie was 16 at the time, 15 years ago in 2006. So as of today, that's how long it's been. Massive, big, warm welcome to you, Tracy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Sue.
It's great to connect all the way across the world and to hear your story, really, from those moments to now and how you've survived those 15 years and what you've been through, the warts and all, really. It would be great to hear your story.
Sure. So, like you said, my daughter Chelsie was 16 when she passed away, and it has been 15 years, and time somewhat stands still in that course of healing and processing the loss. It gets surreal after a while, and I know there's some people who can't resonate with a long-term loss as opposed to recent loss. I like to come from the perspective of we have this journey that we're on, and even though it's been 15 years, I can still go back to the day that I lost her. She was very vibrant. She was very, we like to say in the United States, sparky. She was very social. She had numerous friends. She was social from the time that she was little. She went to daycare when she was little and had all of her little friends in daycare. And she just escalated with friendships, and she participated in sports. And then once she reached high school, she had numerous friends that were in and out of our house all the time, and they were coming over for sleepovers, and she was just a joy to have. And then towards the end of her life, probably within the past year, she started struggling once she started high school, and a lot of peer pressure, a lot of interactions with boys and teachers. And so it was a shock that her mental state changed so much in that last year. She started being delusional, and she just was not a happy person. Mm-hmm. And so when we lost her, my world fell apart. Mm-hmm. I was divorced from her dad at the time. And, I just kind of felt like I was out on my own little island of grief, as it will. Mm-hmm. For the first week or so, I had countless friends, colleagues, old teachers and principals of hers reaching out, checking on me like one would expect. And then after the funeral, they just stopped interacting with me. Mm-hmm. I think part of it is people don't know what to say when we've lost someone. I think part of it was I should just snap back and be normal, right? Whatever normal is after the loss, and everything should be fine and Tracy will be fine. But of course, as we know, it's not that way. I had to go back to work a week after she passed. Wow. And because at that point I was a single mom, mm-hmm. her brother is 14 months older than she is. Right. And so I had bills to pay and I had to eat. So went back to work. And of course, my employer expects the same level of work out of me. Mm-hmm. And I'm the type of person that I can compartmentalize. So I kind of set that aside while I'm over here doing what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. But that started taking its toll pretty soon afterwards. Mm. My health started deteriorating. And the biggest issue I had was I had to drive by the cemetery every day on the way to work.
Oh.
And I couldn't do it. And so my boyfriend at the time had just finished his degree in teaching, and they needed teachers in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I said, I need a change. I need to get out of here. And so we packed up and we just went to Las Vegas. Didn't know anybody in Las Vegas, had never been to Las Vegas. Total culture shock. I did not have a job to walk into, nothing. I just went. The pros and cons of that was it got me out of my environment. I could have a clean start where nobody knew me, nobody knew the story, nobody was judging me about why she wasn't here. The cons to that was I didn't know anybody and I didn't have a job. And in retrospect, we could have done it a little differently, but in hindsight, it was actually probably the best choice for me. Now, I do tell people, don't just make a rash decision and just go do things like that. For me, it worked, but for some people, it may not work. And it's good to research what you want to do first. We went to Vegas, and shortly after we moved there, I found a really great support group. And actually, before we left Washington, I had found the Compassionate Friends support group that was local. They were fantastic. When we arrived in Las Vegas, I thought, well, I'll just find the new group there, and wasn't as warmly received in that group because I was the only one who had lost a child to suicide. And, I had great sympathy and empathy for the other losses in the room. But once I said, the word suicide, they just were off in their own corner talking about their accidents and sicknesses and what it had taken their child. So I didn't go back to that meeting. Subsequent to that, I found a really great support group that was tailored specifically to suicide. But this was any type of loss. This was spouse, this was sibling, but there was a lot of turnover. People would come in maybe for one meeting and we wouldn't see them again. Or they'd come in for two and then we'd never see them again. So I had a lot of exposure to people who had lost children, and I did make some friends in there that are still friends with me today, even though I don't live there anymore, because you resonate with people who've had the same experiences that you have, and especially something that deep and painful. So I really push for peer support groups for people if, some people that's not their thing, but I recommend at least give it a chance and see, just because those peer support stories are so important, just to confirm that what you're feeling is typical for what we feel going through suicide loss. And so I was able to go into the group and tell everybody what I was feeling and hear it back to me that they were feeling it too. Then I started participating in community walks with the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. They had their annual walk. Then I found out they had an overnight walk that was back up in Seattle, which was the area we were originally from. So I flew up to Seattle and I participated in the overnight walk. So after that, I've participated in probably 10 or 15 community walks, 2 overnight walks. And then I hit the point where that wasn't something I just needed to do anymore. I still support them. I donate. I do help the AFSP with coordinating them from time to time, but I needed a change. So in the course of this, I found that I got really angry at the stories that I was hearing about, like myself, people going back to work and everything is expected to be the same as it always was. Or the families who just don't talk to their loved one anymore because they're either blaming the survivor, or there's a variety of different reasons, right? But just the simple fact that I was going into this peer support group and was hearing, okay, we can't talk about any of this outside of this room. If you see someone in this group out on the street, you can wave at them, but don't acknowledge that you know them from this suicide support group. And it really made me angry that we have to be so closeted and hiding, and we get to do all our grief at home and the world outside doesn't know.
Can I ask how long ago that was?
That I got angry about it?
Yeah, those groups that were saying that kind of kept it quite closeted.
10 to 11 years ago.
Okay.
So I decided to go back to school and get my degree in psychology. So I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, mostly because I knew that therapists that were graduating from college weren't really savvy on suicide loss. And so I wanted to see what counselors are being taught in school. And I confirmed that we're not talking about suicide in college.
No.
But I graduated. When I graduated, I started a website for Journey Through Grief and didn't know what I wanted to do with it at that time, but I just knew I was going to do something. So we spent 5 years in Las Vegas and decided to move back up to Washington, but on the east side of the state, because we have family over here. And so we came here and I had to go to work in my typical accounting job. And in the back of my head, I knew something had to happen. I had to get my voice out there somewhere. And I formed Journey Through Grief now as a business. And I'm speaking to different organizations, different podcasts about what it's like to lose your child to suicide. And I thought that maybe things had improved over time. When Chelsie died, we didn't have Facebook. We didn't have Instagram. We had MySpace, but that really wasn't really socially acceptable for my age group anyway. And so now we have Facebook. I jumped on Facebook and thought, I'll find a support group online because I was so excited that we have these online support groups, and of course they're private, which I understand, but I got accepted in there and then started reading the same exact stories or comments that I was hearing in person 15 years ago, that I can't talk to anybody. My family won't talk to me. Nobody understands what I'm going through. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to talk to. Yeah. And that fueled me again with the passion of, we have to get the word out. Survivors are out here and we need to be accepted into the mainstream without feeling like there's something wrong with us, because we have experienced complicated grief, and complicated grief does not just disappear like, what I call regular grief of maybe losing someone to old age or someone was sick. And those are all horrible ways to pass away anyway. But when you lose someone suddenly, whether it's a suicide or a homicide or anything like that, there's a whole different level of grief involved there. Yeah. And so I originally thought, we don't have enough resources out here for people. And I was going to make resources for people. And so I started doing that. But in my travels of visiting different organizations and support groups and whatnot, I realized that there are tons of resources out here. And there are so many passionate people who are putting together webinars and reading materials and things like that. There's so many people doing so many great things. So now the question is, why do these people in support groups think that there's nothing out there? Yeah. Where's the disconnect between getting the information out to the people who need it? Yeah. I know that there's few organizations who they don't want to reach out to a survivor directly. They want the survivor to come to them. Mm-hmm. Once the survivor comes to them, they have a whole wealth of information. But I don't understand that philosophy, because if the survivor doesn't know an organization exists, they're not going to go find them first. So right now, just in the past month or so, I moderated a training. There's a group in Louisiana that it's called the LOSS team, LOSS team. And Dr. Frank Campbell, he years ago created this model where a group, 3 or 4 actual survivors, coordinate with first responders, coroners in their area. Nice. That when a call comes in that there's a new loss, this team gets the call and they go out to the scene. And of course, I'm making it sound really simple, but there's a lot of buy-in that has to happen with different parts of the puzzle. But the premise is that a group of loss survivors goes out to the scene and immediately connects with that loss survivor on their level to explain, hey, we're here for you. Whatever you need, just call us. They don't go out and overwhelm the survivor or anything. It's just making their presence known. Yeah. And I think that initial contact with a loss survivor makes all the difference. And Dr. Campbell has done his research that has found that people who are connected with grief support that's, suicide loss related, they get through their grief so much faster.
Yeah.
And as you know, we never are over our grief. It doesn't go away. It just becomes softer, lessens over time. A person who has newly lost somebody, and I was the same way. If you'd have told me, 15 years from now, you're going to be talking about this and going on podcasts, or I would have told you that you were out of your mind. There was no way. I didn't even know how to get out of bed and get to work. So, but, had I had some support initially of that caliber where people were telling me that they've been through it, it may have made a difference in my own recovery. So, that's where we're at now. Like I said, I have my business. We have a podcast, Journey Through Your Suicide Loss. And my thought with doing the podcast was somebody could hear what I've gone through from my perspective. And I talk about everything from going through holidays and going through anniversaries of her death and her birthday. Yeah. In fact, her birthday is 3 days from now, and she would have been 31 on Friday. Right. And again, it's so surreal to think that she was 16 when we lost her, and she would have been 31 today, or, on Friday. Yeah. It's just so bizarre. And I used to find that people would avoid me on her birthday because they were like, well, we don't want to remind you that it's her birthday. And I used to laugh because I'm like, well, I was there and I know that it's her birthday. So you not telling me really is irrelevant to the situation. But the fact that people would ignore me on her birthday kind of fueled this whole thought of, I shouldn't think about her birthday either. If they're not acknowledging her, I'm supposed to forget. And about 5 years or so after she passed away, all of a sudden I went, wait a minute, no, she's my daughter. Even though she's not physically here, she is my daughter. If she was here, we'd still be having cake and going out to dinner, whatever she wanted to do. And so now every year I celebrate her birthday. So I'll get, a cake on Friday and we'll eat birthday cake and we'll light a candle and all the good things. So this whole idea out in the world that we have to just forget they were here and move on is not realistic at all. And we shouldn't have to. We should be made to feel like we have to. And so that's what I'm trying to share with people is, let people grieve their loved one as long as they need to. Don't judge them for wanting to celebrate their loved one, and give people grace on the fact that people handle things in life differently. We're not one size fits all kind of people. We all grieve differently. We all express emotion differently. Have some empathy and help people who are grieving. And then I get the questions of, well, I don't know how to help them. I don't know what to say. So rather than say something wrong, I'd rather not say anything at all. And the answer to that usually is, well, then just tell them that. It doesn't hurt to say, I know you're going through this. I don't know what to say to you. And I don't know what to say that will help you, but I will sit here and I will listen to you. Tell me anything you want to. Anything you want to just vent. I'm here for you. I'm here to listen. I'm here to give you a hug. I'm here to just show that I care. And I think if we had more of that bonding between people, I think that would help with getting people through or process through. I try to say not getting through because we don't get through it. We process it. It becomes different. And then we process it in the space that we're in at that time.
Yeah, it takes the relationships, doesn't it? And all of this destigmatization that you've experienced, all those shutting downs of, you can't talk about this outside of here. And I see the reasoning behind that to keep everybody safe. They thought they were keeping everybody safe, but what it's doing is just shutting it down even more.
Right.
You're trying to help people understand, aren't you, that the more that we come together and talk, I just feel sometimes like I want to just scream the word sometimes, like hundreds of times, suicide, 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 just to say it's a word. It's not a word to push down under the carpet because it's happening in the real world. It's happening out there.
Right.
And it's happening. It feels like it happens to us when we're left with the pieces of it. And I just want to scream out there to say, this is a word just like tomato, tomato,
correct,
tomato, tomato. It's a word, it's another word. But that word is heavily socially constructed into a taboo, a heavy word. And of course, it's a heavy word. We don't want it to become a less heavy word because it's serious stuff. But we want it to be a heavy word we can speak about and deconstruct this stigmatization that's happened over the years with it and the taboo around it. So I really commend what you're doing, especially with those first response teams that can go in. I mean, I've questioned the same and I've questioned it with other people. How do we get to those people? And as professionals, how do we train professionals on the needs unless they've been there themselves? Because it's really hard to explain the heaviness, the complexity of it.
Right.
It's hard to put that into words because words sometimes aren't enough, are they?
No. Well, and I don't know how it is where you are, but here in the United States, there's a lot of messaging on language. So if you get a passionate survivor, they'll just go and they'll just tell you everything that's bothering them, and that might bother somebody else because of the language that they used. We say, don't use the word commit. And I understand all of that. But, when you get into a pure group meeting that's the door is shut, no one's around, a lot of times you hear people say, I don't care what word you're using. Here's the point. I feel like garbage. I just, I have guilt and I'm angry and on all this stuff. And my concern is that we spend so much time worried about what language or what word choices, rather, that we're using that sometimes we don't see the big picture of. People need to tell their story. They need to express their grief. They need to get it out, because if you hold in grief, it becomes unhealthy. 3 months after I lost Chelsie, I had this horrible pain in my chest that felt like a heart attack, scared me to death. Went to the doctor and they diagnosed me with a hiatal hernia. And I, didn't know what that was. And so after I researched it, basically I have a small hole in my abdomen. Usually you would get that from strenuous activity or, if I lifted something more heavier than I should. And basically this rip in my abdomen happened because I was repressing all of this grief and my body took the toll. So I try, like I said, I understand that word choices are important. And people will get angry if a word choice is used that they don't like. Yeah. But on the same token, people are like, I don't care if I hurt your feelings. I need to say this. So it gets back to giving people grace, educate people. Hey, we should not use this word. We're not going to judge you and never talk to you again because you used it. Right now, I am enrolled for my master's degree in psychology. I decided to go back to school. Nice. Because this program I'm in has an emphasis in life coaching. And as I looked at it, I thought I wanted to go into life coaching for loss survivors who are further out in their grief, because once the initial anguish and severe pain of the process happens, we do start looking at the future. And I am not the same person I was before Chelsie died. All of a sudden, all the interests that I had for hobbies and just things I enjoyed, I didn't like them anymore. They held no meaning for me whatsoever. I don't know why, but as I've talked to other people, that's normal. Somehow we just totally change our whole chemical makeup somehow of this loss. And so with life coaching, it's about setting goals and trying to improve your mindset where you're at. Yeah. And so I thought, well, that could be something to look at for loss survivors. And so in this life coaching program portion of this college degree that I'm doing, I'm learning the difference between, well, this is what therapists and psychologists can talk about, and this is what life coaches can talk about. And there's a distinction between the two. But there's also a lot of overlap between the two. And so when you were talking about going in and talking to your therapists, again, therapists are great for the pain and how do I get out of this mental loop I'm in of not being able to function, and they're great. But they're not going to help you with planning for the future and finding new hobbies and that type of thing. So, and again, I struggle with the therapists because, not their fault, they are not getting the training in college for suicide loss. And they might get some grief counseling experience in there. But unless you have a professor who is adamant about this sector of people that are either wanting to die or have lost someone. People, and I don't know how it is in England, but people here are like, oh, I just lost somebody. I'm very, very sad. I have to go find a therapist. And that's our go-to. That's our common thought process. And then there's a lot of feedback of, I went to this therapist and they didn't understand at all what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And now I don't want to see them anymore because they can't empathize with me. So I think there needs to be a lot of different avenues for people to process their grief. And, if I can bring life coaching into the mix to make that happen, that's my current plan.
Great. Yeah, there's the third wave of kind of CBT. I love acceptance and commitment therapy. That's a lot more about future values and goals orientated work alongside therapeutic approach. But I think we're just moving into that area in psychology. It's a new approach. And I love that, we can offer those different perspectives, different avenues for everybody at different parts. Like if you're offering that later on down the line, you need completely different things, don't you? 15 years down the line compared to weeks in, completely different.
Yes.
It's almost having all of that in one place where somebody can go and see all of those different avenues available to them in one place. And hopefully Instagram, Facebook, all of the places where these people are coming together, that they'll be able to find that. But it's not easy enough. And I've spoken to many people, like you said, that are in the UK that have lost someone to suicide. They sit there and haven't got a clue what to do. There's no handbook. The feelings are so overwhelming. It needs somebody to walk in and say, this is what's here for you when you are ready. There's the leaflet. I'll tap back in with you in a month. I'll give you a call in a month and see where you're at then. And just know the family dynamics of that one person situation, because it's so different for everybody, isn't it? The family dynamic.
Yes.
Some will need different help than others, and the relationship's different. Everything's so different, but it takes one person. And they're starting to bring that in the UK. Thank goodness. A lot more funding's gone into suicide grief in the UK, and they're starting to put a support worker in the early days. But again, it's all just opening up. So it's trial, it's see how it goes. Are those people trained enough? Do they understand the complexity enough? And that's where I'm taking my research to help professionals understand it more and to roll out. There is training in the UK going into training professionals. So it's very slow, isn't it? It's like anything, we're starting it.
Yes.
We're all doing it. And we've got to keep doing it and keep nudging the systems until you look at from 15 years ago when there was not even a support group specialized in suicide grief. Now there is, isn't there?
Yes. Yes. And again, it's making the bridge between the people who need it and the resources that exist.
Yeah.
That seems to be the biggest disconnection right now.
Yeah.
And I always say also, my frustration is when you lose someone to suicide and you're in that immediate shock and then despair and then anger, and it's 24/7, 365 days a year. It doesn't stop. But when you finally can, at least here in the United States, you find a therapist, and assuming that they do have exposure to suicide grief themselves, so they found the right person to talk to. But now you get the matter of, what will their insurance cover? How many visits will their insurance cover? How much time does this therapist have in any given week to see you? I mean, we have some insurance policies here that may cover 20 visits in a year, or 2 or 3 visits in a month. So you have an hour of time you can talk to somebody, and you have all the rest of the hours, even at 2 a.m, when you're distraught and crying and punching the walls because you have nobody to talk to. We have to do better. So again, with the life coaching, I can put up a group site and say, come in here 24 hours a day and chat with somebody. We have a really great organization in the States called Alliance for Hope. And they have forums in their website where people can go in and have those talks with people at 3 a.m, middle of the night, on a weekend, whatever. And I've heard that those have been very popular and helpful.
Yeah.
So I try to tell everybody, go find them. But yes, it's better than it was 15 years ago, but we still have a long way to go. And as you pick apart the different situations with people, not only do you have the loss, like when I lost Chelsie, we struggled with Chelsie that last year.
Yeah.
So there's no adequate support for people who struggle with someone.
Mm.
Not always, but typically someone who has died by suicide may have made other attempts ahead of that time. And there's not resources adequate for people who are struggling with, what's my person going to do? Can I go to sleep tonight and worry that they'll make a poor decision overnight?
Mm.
And so there's a nonprofit organization called A Voice at the Table, who's in Massachusetts. And they developed some workshops for people who are struggling with their loved one. And I was recently named the director for Washington State.
Nice.
And Anne Marie Matulis, she's the president of Voice at the Table. And she and Tracy, her partner, created these workshop series for people who are thinking about suicide, people who are impacted by their loved one, either struggling with suicide or dying by suicide. And I'm excited to bring those workshops here, and we get those across the United States. And I know she's talked to some people internationally as well.
Great.
So hopefully she can get those going overseas as well.
Great.
So, like I said, there's lots of stuff going on. And the people on our side of the grief, the people who are advocates and the doctors and life coaches, and we're all putting together really great things, and we're all recognizing, and we're trying to break down these silos of the standalone doctors and the advocates, and we're trying to break down these silos and bridge these connections so that we can get all these materials and all this really great help out to new survivors that have been going through this a while, people that want to learn about what survivors go through so that they can help as well. So there's a lot of just really great things going on. And I know that your listeners are probably hearing this going, well, I don't know what great things are going on because I'm miserable. But they can reach out to you because you're going to have resources that you can share. And when you share my information, they can come find me, and, I'll share what I have. And it's about getting rid of the stigma, getting rid of, like you said, the taboo about talking about it. Because I'll go out and, I'll tell people, yeah, I lost my daughter to suicide. Mm-hmm. And they'll look at me like, oh, you poor thing, which is great. Mm-hmm. I don't turn away anybody that wants to feel sorry for me. But, they'll just look at me like, oh, okay, we got to stay away from her. Mm-hmm. We don't want to bring any of this up. It's going to upset her. And I'm the first one to say, I love to talk about Chelsie. I will talk about Chelsie all day long in any context you want. Because, I love her, and she was my child, and she was here, and that's just the way it is. And would I change how things went? Obviously, of course I would. But I've grown so much as a human being, just processing through this loss and learning how to pull myself up out of this horrible disaster. And all I can do is hope for others that they're able to pull themselves to a place where they can be happy to talk about their loved one and not be squashed by other people putting their own fears and preconceived notions and whatever onto them. And I struggled really greatly the first 5 years or so when people would ask me, well, how many kids do you have? And I used to lie. I used to say, oh, I have one. I have my son. And then I thought, well, that seems to be an injustice to Chelsie to not acknowledge that she exists. And I read something somewhere, somebody said, well, your parents, they die, your grandparents may have died, your great-great-grandparents have probably died. Do you not acknowledge that they existed because they're gone? Well, no. So when somebody said, well, so what's the difference? Your child died. Don't dismiss the fact that they did. So that sounds great. And I started telling people, I have 2 children. I have more now due to marriage and, and a family and everything. But at the time I was like, no, I have 2. Well, then the question came, oh, well, where are they? What do they do? Where do they live? And so I finally just got comfortable with the fact of saying, well, we lost Chelsie when she was 16. And depending on the day and how I'm feeling, I may get the questions of, oh, what happened? And I may say, it isn't something I like to discuss. I'm sorry, but she's gone, and that's good enough. I kind of invest in the people I talk to, do they need to know? If it's someone close to me that at that time, I mean, pretty much everybody knows now, but at the time, if it was somebody close to me that just hadn't heard, then I would say, oh, we lost her to suicide. If it was somebody I didn't know, like a coworker I just started working with, then I'd be like, well, sorry, I just don't talk about it. Like I said at the beginning, everybody's different. How we grieve is different. How we share our story is different. We just need to not be scared to share it, because sharing it gives you power to work through your grief and move beyond it.
Yeah. I can imagine a lot of people listening as well thinking, can I be in that place ever where or now listening thinking, how do I make a difference as well? Hearing that there's all these things going on, how can people get involved with these groups? Making contact with you, making contact with me. You can all get involved if you want to at your level, at your time and your space, because these groups and these attempts at trying to raise awareness, these attempts at reducing the stigma, we're all understanding that you've got to come first in that. Like I think, well, Tracy, you've got to come first in this. And you're thinking, well, Sue, you've got to come first in this. We know that our emotional well-being is the most important thing. So if anybody wants to get involved, there's lots of fundraising that can be done. There's lots of marathons that can be run. There's lots of events that you can get involved in small ways or big ways. But it's having the courage at first, isn't it? Just to make that first contact and saying, I'm here. What can I do to help? But if you contact Tracy, if you contact me, that's where you can find that information out to know where to start.
And there's so many different ways to help. I mean, like I said, there's the community events. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention does their walks. There's other groups, entities throughout the United States that do walks on their own. There's people who just write out cards that get mailed to people that say, hey, I'm thinking about you.
No.
We need people to write those. We need people that will just share the stories and share the fact that organizations exist and let people find the ones they want to work with. But they have to know that we're here. So even if you've not had any experience with your own suicide loss, the odds are that you know somebody who has, or you know somebody who's been exposed to somebody who has. They say for each person who dies by suicide, 135 people are affected. And so when you start multiplying that by thousands of people who die every year, and then you multiply that by 135, we're into millions of people that are affected one way or another. I mean, I get messages sent to me all the time of, I'm glad that you're talking about this, because 20 years ago, I lost my college roommate and really didn't think a lot about it. But now over time, I've realized that my life choices and my perceptions are still connected to that loss. And I never realized how it affected me.
No.
When Chelsie passed away, we had a memorial service for her at the end of the week. And in excess of 300 people showed up, this 16-year-old.
Wow.
And I didn't even realize that we knew 300 people because we lived in this very small town, very small community. But, her kindergarten principal came and her grade school teachers came and people that I hadn't seen in 15 years, they came, and it was just so overwhelming of how many people are affected by it.
They don't really know how many people do they. It goes anything from 6 people up to 135 because there's no way of knowing how people are affected. There's no way of knowing if it's the head teacher of the school of a teenager. What responsibility do they think? Everyone just goes through their own responsibility, guilt story, don't they? How could I have made a difference here? And it affects, in a school, all the other years, the classmates, the friends, the teachers, the list goes on and on and on, doesn't it?
Well, and here's a good example. So last month, I received a Facebook message from somebody I didn't know. And I responded, and this girl sent me a message, really long, lengthy message, that she knew Chelsie in high school, that she had classes with Chelsie the year that Chelsie died, and how much she admired Chelsie and how much Chelsie meant to her. And she had carried guilt for 14 years that Chelsie was having a bad week the week she died, and tried to reach out to her to talk. And she just kind of blew her off and ignored her and didn't make time for her.
Mm.
And then Chelsie died. And so she, like I said, I didn't know her. I didn't know her name. Her name didn't sound familiar in all the circles of people that Chelsie told me about. But this poor girl had carried this guilt of not supporting Chelsie that week for 14 years. And she went into the Army and she did some behavioral health work in the Army to help others who had died by suicide, and decided to make her career out of behavioral health. And so she's not actively in the armed service now, but she's going to school for psychology to do that. And she wanted to apologize to me for not being there for Chelsie. And my initial reaction, and then she ended it with, I understand if you never want to talk to me. And just total self-guilt. And so my initial reaction was, oh, this poor girl has carried this guilt for all of this time. That's obviously impacted her life and impacted her emotional state. I just wanted to hug her through the computer. And I wrote back to her and I said, oh my goodness, please stop feeling bad about this. Chelsie was going through a lot. All of us around her didn't know what we were dealing with. And you can't harbor all of that on yourself.
Mm.
I don't have any resentment towards you.
Mm.
Anybody that knows Chelsie would not have resentment towards you. And, thank you for all the work that you're doing in this space. But, oh my goodness, please stop feeling so horrible about this, because you had no idea what Chelsie was thinking and you had no idea what choice she was going to make. And, it's the same thing I tell other parents. On my podcast, I did an episode where I said, when your child, like I said, I have my son, I know children aren't perfect. And so when they're going to go make horrible choices like skip school or go drinking and you don't know and whatever, they don't ask you first. They don't say, hey, I'm going to go out and skip school today. Just want to let you know.
Mm.
Or I'm going to go steal my friend's parents' car and we're going to go joyriding. But they're not going to tell you first. So this isn't any different.
Mm.
They aren't going to say, hey, I'm going to go and make this horrible choice about 5:00 today. Just want you to know. And there's so much guilt involved with parents of, oh, I should have known. And, it's my child and I should have been there and I should have protected them. And you did the best you could with what you had. And it took years for me to get to that point. That isn't something that just you realize overnight. But the reality is we're all people. We don't share our thoughts with everybody, good, bad, or otherwise. So give yourself grace on the fact that this could happen. Always instill that, you're there for people and be a resource for people if they want to talk to you, but don't expect them to talk to you because they may not.
Yeah, be ready. Be ready, especially with teenagers. I've got 4 teenagers and I'm there, but I can't force them to come and talk to me,
Right.
Especially teenagers. I can be there as much as I possibly can be available. And it's difficult to do that as a mum because you can't sit there for 24 hours a day waiting for them to come down the stairs. So typically, just when they want to talk to you, you've just started something like this and they can't interrupt you. But hey, you just go up to them as soon as you finish and say, did you want me? And the moment might have gone, but that's the best we can do. And I love that saying, I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. And we couldn't possibly have known at the time. You couldn't possibly have known at the time. It's not even in your coherent story of life, is it, that that's going to happen? So you couldn't possibly have known that at the time or do anything about it at the time. Even if there's been problems mentally, or mental health difficulties, that's still the thing that is just not going to happen to my loved one.
And Chelsie had made an attempt about 6 months prior to that. And I was diligent. I was taking her in for assessment and hopefully treatment and whatnot. But you hear the word suicide, but you really can't put it into context until it happens to you. Once it happens to you, it's a game changer, because up until then, it's like, okay, yeah, suicide, yeah, somebody died and whatever. But you don't realize the ramifications and the magnification and all the stuff that happens when you lose a person to suicide. And you don't understand the ripple effects that happen from that. And my son, he was 17 when Chelsie died. So he immediately spiraled out of control.
Mm.
And I wasn't in a place mentally and emotionally to parent And I've regretted that up till this day, because you don't want to give up basically on your kid. But when you're in a mental space, an emotional space where you're lucky to get dressed to track down your child, your other child, and make sure that they're doing everything they're supposed to, I'll admit I copped out and said, I can't do it. I can't do it. Fortunately, he had his father. I mean, I don't want people to think he was like out there destitute with nobody. He had his father, but I couldn't parent. And it took him 13 years to pull himself out of drug and alcoholism and just the pit of despair that he was in. He's functioning now, thank goodness. And I'm just so proud of him that he's come to where he is right now. But it was rough. I mean, it was really bad.
Just imagine as a mum, you've lost Chelsie to suicide and then you see your son as well. How that must have been.
Well, and I was very hypervigilant there for a long time. Once you lose a child, you realize you can lose any of them. And he was making really poor choices with his life, drinking and driving and horrible stuff. And so every day I was, okay, where is he? What's he doing? What's he going to do? I can't lose another child. And it was really horrible. And it took years to get to the point of, don't get me wrong, I still worry every time the phone rings that, what am I going to hear on the other end? But it's not constant every day, all day long. I had to realize that he's an adult now. He's going to make the choices he's going to make. He knows that I'm here for him if he needs me. And there's so many things in your life you can't control. And it's accepting the fact that you can't control them. And having coping skills for that is what's important for that.
Yeah, we can only do what we can do. I can imagine, yeah. It's amazing you're still doing so. Like you say, it softens, doesn't it? And you're coping the only way that you can now through doing something.
But don't get me wrong. I don't want people to think, oh, okay, it ceases and then it's done, because it doesn't. I still have my days where I just shut the world off. And especially in this work, I take on a lot of everyone else's stories that affect me and make me sad. And with Chelsie, it's not every day. Her birthday comes, her anniversary of her death is in December. And so, but I plan for those things now. And I know there's a good possibility for the week leading up to it. It's not just that day. It could be a full week. It could be a full month leading up to that anniversary. That, I may be more tired than usual. I may see a bunch of pictures when she was 7, and they may make me cry. I may get a call from somebody and unrelated to Chelsie, but that might make me cry. So, it still happens. I'm not over it because, like I said, I'll never be over it.
Yeah.
It's just different.
It's different, yeah. And you prepare more. How can people listen to your podcast then to hear how because I guess on there is a lot of how you've done that. So it's great for them to listen to that if they want to know how you've survived.
Right. We have a new episode that's going to be coming out about support animals.
Okay.
Because right after we moved to Las Vegas, shortly after, I got a cat. And I'm more of a cat person. My husband's more of a dog person. But so I won the argument and got a cat first. So I didn't realize how much I needed a cat until I got the cat. And she's great to just sit on my lap and pet when I'm frustrated. And so she's helped me through a lot. So that's going to be the newest episode here shortly, will be support animals and how they helped me and why they probably helped somebody else.
Right.
So the podcast is called Journey Through Your Suicide Loss. And it's on Anchor. It's on Apple. I'm sure because it's hosted on Anchor and they blow it out to different platforms. I'm sure it's on some platforms that I don't even know about. But if you Google Journey Through Your Suicide Loss,
you'll find it.
The search engine goes out and finds them all, and you could just click on it.
Well, I'll put the link into the description as well, and
perfect.
Add a link as well to your Facebook and Instagram pages so they can find you there, and your website. We'll put that on the link.
That'd be great.
So if you want to get hold of Tracy, just contact. You're happy for people to contact by the sounds. Very happy. So that's cool.
Yeah. And we have, the typical mailing list sign up that you can sign up and get our emails that go out periodically of what's going on. Obviously, we're coming into September, which is Suicide Prevention Month.
Yeah.
So we'll be ramping up some content for that. And then the holidays come, and the holidays are tough for people. So
yeah,
make sure we get some more content on there for that. Like I said, the new workshops that are coming for people who are just impacted by the loss. Maybe you didn't lose the person, but your friend lost somebody or your sister lost somebody or whatever the case may be, but you need support too because you don't know what to do. So
yeah, great.
Watch the website for links for signing up for those as well.
Great. Brilliant. Thank you so much for telling your story. It's been really interesting speaking to you from your wisdom, from the place of all of your learning and where you are now.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for all that you're doing for just getting the word out and, like you said, putting the word suicide out there, that we need to talk about it. We need to say the word.
Yeah. And happy birthday to Chelsie on Friday. Is it Friday?
Friday, yeah.
Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us here today. I hope it served you and given you something for your journey with suicide. Come back and subscribe, do whatever you need to do on your platform to help us to raise awareness of suicide, because the more we keep saying the word, the more we can gain support for us left behind, and the more we can raise awareness of the word and how society sees it and reduce this stigma that's so attached to it. Please get in touch. You can find me on my website, suicide&griefsupport.com. I really want to hear from you. But for now, please take care of yourselves and take care of each other. And remember, we are stronger together.